Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Monday. Don Fischer should be joining us here in just a moment. We'll wait for Don to jump in here. But Indiana, I was just looking, moves up to number 56 in the net rankings. That's only one spot difference. Don joining us now. Don, how are you, sir? Pretty good. Not a bad weekend for you.
No, probably one of the best wins, without question, the best win of the season. Really good day yesterday for Indiana basketball, and you got to feel great for these kids. They performed in the second half like a team that we know that they're capable of playing like, and it's nice to see that they finally came up with one of those performances to show everybody else they could do it as well.
Well, I'll tell you how I describe it is, I removed my fan card a long time ago, but in watching the Michigan State game, watching this game, how they played was very similar defensively. Like their hair was on fire, but I don't think even the Michigan State performance did not equal this one. The second half, their defensive prowess between Anthony Leal and Miles Rice, the job that they did on Braden Smith, shutting him down, and Trey Galloway with 9 assists. Then you've got other guys that did various different things and this was a team effort, but a small team effort. It was a small group of guys that did the brunt of the work, and they did it very, very well. Anthony Leal, he just did all of those things that you needed to do yesterday. 4 of his points, I remember both times when he scored under the basket. I'm like, how the hell is he scoring under the basket like that? But he got 2 baskets in that way and did a great job, him and Miles, on Braden Smith. And that, to me, is what I've always said about Purdue. Purdue is a good team. I said, but they're just not great, because we saw what UConn did to their guards in the national title game. I go, that's what you do. If you can shut their guards down, they're screwed. And especially with not having a Zach Edey, they could not handle the interior presence that Indiana posed.
Well, if you looked at the games that Indiana has beaten Purdue since Mike Woodson's been the coach, every single time it was shutting guards down. In all those ball games that Indiana won, I think are they dead even in Woodson's career here now? I think they are, as far as the record for Mike is concerned. But it's guard play that you've got to really deal with when you're playing Purdue. If Braden Smith is out there running the point and he is having his way, it's going to be a tough day for your basketball team, whoever it may be. And then, of course, Fletcher Lawyer had 20 points in that ball game yesterday, but many of his points came late in the contest when Indiana had a good lead. He was the one guy that was just kind of holding them up, keeping them in the ball game at the point where he was scoring. But the truth of the matter is, you've got to be able to, as Coach Woodson would say, you've got to be able to cut the head of the snake off. And obviously they did that yesterday.
18 assists on 28 made baskets. And that's something that was noticed earlier, that they were piling up assists. That didn't happen at the end. I noticed at the half, I'm like, ooh, their assists are really, which means you're moving the ball. And they were successfully doing that. And it wasn't just Anthony Leal had 4 assists. Malik Renew had 4 assists, along with Trey Galloway's 9. So when you're getting 4 assists out of your big guy and 4 assists from an off guard, you're having a good day.
Well, there was no question. The second half was a good day for everybody on the Indiana basketball team. And everybody I'm talking about were the 4 guys that played the entire second half. Yes. And that was Miles Rice, Anthony Leal, Luke Goody, and Trey Galloway. Those guys played all 20 minutes of the second half of the game. I think Galloway played, 38 minutes? He had basically a minute and 57 seconds or something like that he did not play. That was it. But all 4 of those guys played the entire second half, along with Malik and Umar Ballo, who subbed in for one another. So again, we see another more evidence of the fact that when they play both bigs at the same time, it doesn't work as well. And when they've got the one big substituting for the other, it works amazingly well, which is the smaller lineup that Indiana has been able to win with here, especially late this season when they have won games.
Amazing how that happens. Wonderful. But and there was if you'd have said that they will do this with Mackenzie and Boswell only playing 9 minutes, scoring 0 points, that would have been hard to believe, but they did. They got it done with hard work. They did not have an outstanding shooting day from behind the 3-point line. They were 4 of 19 for just 21%, while Purdue was 7 of 16. If you beat a team that hits 7 of 16 for 43%, that you're doing something amazing. And Indiana did just that because that's what Purdue's numbers were from behind the 3-point line.
Well, in the second half, Purdue hit 1 3-point field goal. They had 6 in the first half. And when you look at the first half, what was the score? It was 37 to 25 at halftime. In the second half, Indiana cut those 3-point shots down. Obviously, Lawyer is going to get his points sometimes, but he was the only guy really that was hurting Indiana scoring-wise in the second half of this ball game. And the other thing that they made everything tough inside against Trey Kaufman-Renn. He had a tough afternoon in respect to his normal game. I mean, he scored 9 points. That's well under his average, to say the least. So it wasn't just the guards that were being stopped. It was the inside game as well in that second half. And I give Malik and Umar credit because both those guys I thought played really well when they were in the ball game in the second half.
Yeah, Indiana had 5 guys in double figures, and that doesn't include Anthony Leal's 8 points, while Purdue just had 2 guys in double figures, and only one of those a starter. And as a matter of fact, if you look at Purdue's starters, 5 and 8 is 13, and 22 points. 22 points.
You're showing us your arithmetic prowess.
Yeah, well, I didn't pull out my fingers at least. But those are 4 starters that you only get 22 points from. That you're not going to win many games when 4 of your starters combine for just 22 points.
Right. There's no question about that. And here's another factor, too, that was big yesterday. Indiana had only 7 turnovers. If you remember, in the first matchup against Purdue, Indiana had 20 turnovers and still were in the ball game. And, of course, they ended up losing that contest, but they were in it. Yesterday, only 7 turnovers in the contest. And Purdue, they had 16, which is very rare for them. And that's one of the reasons Indiana was able to get really good offense out of the defensive side, getting it started.
Well, Indiana was the team that was turning the pressure up, putting the pressure on Purdue, which forced them, and especially in the second half, it was enjoyable to watch from a technical standpoint. The Indiana was just inside of the Purdue jerseys. They were smothering them, forcing them into turnovers. I will not forget the one with Anthony Leal basically is able to jump up and grab I forget who it was. I think Fletcher Lawyer maybe was going for a layup, but he was able to grab the ball and get a jump ball. I was like, that's old school. That's side yard basketball, man. But they made it work. They were just relentless from a defensive standpoint.
They were. It's the best half of basketball. I think my color analyst Eric Suhr may have gotten a little carried away with this comment at the end of the ball game, but he
didn't climb on the table, did he?
No, none of that. but Eric said after we got off the air, he said that might be the best basketball half of basketball I've seen at Indiana ever. And from his perspective, that may be true because Eric was a walk-on for Indiana back in the 2002 to 2003 to 2007 seasons, and played a lot of basketball at the end of his 2 years or his final junior and senior year. The last, I think Kelvin Sampson was. His last year, his senior year, was under Kelvin Sampson and Mike Davis's junior year, but he played a lot of basketball as a walk-on in Indiana back in those 2 seasons. And he's an aficionado in the sense of knowing what the last 20 plus years of basketball at Indiana have been. And there's no doubt it was one of the best halves of basketball I think I've seen in a long, long time.
Well, there's no doubt because of what it meant, because of who it was. You didn't have a bunch of All-Americans out there for Indiana. As a matter of fact, you talked about 3 of the 4 guys that played the entire second half are Indiana seniors. Luke Goody, Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal. Those guys have, Luke Goody has not been at Indiana the whole time, still an Indiana kid, a senior. This was their last run at Purdue. And so they put up the kind of effort you should see in that scenario.
Well, they certainly have a leadership issue there, and not an issue, but a leadership factor that's there because these guys were playing probably their last game against Purdue. I guess there's a possibility, and I don't know this factually, that Luke Goody could come back because he had a season in which I think he played just 12 games in Illinois and he got hurt and he was out for the rest of the year. And I think that they are put in for a medical redshirt season that he could come back if he wants to. I don't know.
That would be a great carryover if we could get that.
No question. I just don't know what that status is. But at any rate, there's a possibility that all these guys are done. And we know that Galloway and Leal certainly are. And obviously, Baldo won't be back either. I mean, the questions now are all post-season type questions, which I don't want to get into at this juncture because you're going to have a new coach next year. And that guy's going to dictate who's there and who's not in regard to the guys that are still on the roster. But there's still going to be an exodus on this roster at the end of the season. And again, I don't want to get into all that right now because it's way too early to do. But here's what we will say. This team now has put themselves back in the position of maybe getting an NCAA tournament bid if, in fact, they close out this year the right way. And the right way is to win at least 3 of the 4 games they have left and then the Big Ten tournament. So we'll just see how it all plays out. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but just to put yourself back in that picture, I think that gives a little bit of an adrenaline shot to these players.
Absolutely, because it gives you something to fight for. And if you don't have something to fight for, it's kind of hard to maintain that level. But the one thing that they will have to do, Don, is make a West Coast swing where they will go to Washington and then Oregon. Oregon, obviously a team that is trying to bolster their postseason resume. They just got a good win over the weekend. Washington is not a team that has played very well this season. It's a game Indiana can't lose. That's a game Indiana cannot lose, I think, if they have any shot of making the tournament. I don't know that they have to beat Oregon, but that's one that's not a bad loss. You got to beat Ohio State to finish the season out at home, as well as Penn State at home, which I think that they will. So I agree with you. If they go 3-1, Oregon's not a bad loss. Boy, they're going to be right smack on the bubble if they're able to do that.
No question. You don't know that the Big Ten now has 20 teams, and how many teams will they take out of the Big Ten? And in truth, only about 5 or 6 teams this year have showed themselves in the top 25 on a consistent basis. So it's still up in the air. And conference tournaments and those kinds of things all play into this too. You know, the lesser programs or the mid-majors and those kinds of things, who they take on that in those areas all plays into whether or not there's an availability for an at-large bid.
And you've got other teams that are kind of in Indiana's position. Nebraska is one of those, and they are right in that same Mendoza line fighting for that spot. And theirs can go either way as well. They have to make hay here at the end of the season to make the tournament, I think. But Indiana could surpass Nebraska.
Could happen. Well, again, this is all speculation, and we got 4 games left. And right now, Penn State's on the agenda coming up on Wednesday night, and they just came up with a win over Minnesota. They've had a tough stretch here in the last half of the season for them. And Indiana's beaten Penn State once already, but Penn State is well coached. Mike Rhodes is a good coach. They have maybe found something a little bit here of late. And we'll see how, in fact, that goes. But if Indiana plays up to what we saw on Saturday, they can beat anybody that they play.
And here's the thing. Indiana now tied for 9th in the conference ahead of Ohio State, which is, I I'm going to call a definite NCAA tournament team because of their numbers, not because I think they're spectacular, but getting a win over Ohio State alone, that's going to be big for Indiana. And they're in that position. And I think that I can't believe I'm saying this. I think that they can make it in because I said long ago that this team was not going to make the NCAA tournament. And I was pretty convinced I was right until now. And so, but hey, I can say when I was wrong, and but if I'm wrong, it's great for Indiana fans. I don't mind that. It would be fun to see the fight that they showed Sunday for the rest of the season. Just seeing that is an amazing thing.
That's the thing that all year long we've watched this team play, and we've looked for that kind of performance. And I say that because they've had good games before, but there have been a lot of games they haven't finished and haven't been able to win them down to the end here recently, of course. And there are a lot of games where they played poorly and just didn't seem like they had that competitive edge that you need to compete. So we'll just have to wait and see. This is still a long way to go in regard to what's going to happen here at the end of the year, but Indiana now has something to fight for, and there's no question about that.
Absolutely. So up next, let's see. Is there a coach's show left?
Yes, there is. We play Inside IU basketball. We will have Inside IU basketball tonight from Hoosier Hanks and Yasir Rosemont, who had the scout for this ball game yesterday as our guest tonight. He will be on the show. I think we're going to have Luke Macklin, who is the head manager for this Indiana basketball program. I have always loved talking to the managers. I interview the seniors every year, as many seniors as I can get on. And managers are the hardest working people, bar nobody, from the basketball program other than the head coach or the assistant coaches. So these guys work their tails off, and I love these guys, and they're always articulate. And they're always guys that know what they want from their future as well. And obviously Luke is one of those.
I will take you one better. I will say they are the hardest working people in the basketball program because they do so many things that people have no clue about. The hours that they put in, I don't know where the hell they come up with, because I know how many hours I spend doing stuff. And I'm like, boy, those guys are right there. And I'm like, how the hell they go to school? How do they have a life?
They don't.
Exactly.
These guys they have essentially very little social life other than with the other managers who they see every moment of the day. So it's really interesting. And they're great kids. They really are. Great young men, I should say.
And they have this group of guys are awesome. I know some of them, and they are a great, great group. And that's what makes it up. And that's why you look and you see these stories, whether it's Dusty May or somebody else. That was Lawrence Frank, a former manager that does so well in this sport, because these are basketball guys, and they use this as it's like a PhD class.
Don't forget Scott Dolson.
Well, Scott, how can I ever forget Scott Dolson? He's got a ring, baby. He's got a ring.
That's right. Hey,
LJ Wright. You remember LJ Wright?
Of course.
Absolutely. I went to high school with LJ.
LJ is a great guy. His dad's a wonderful man. No question about that.
My athletics director through high school.
One of the biggest Indiana fans that you'll see, and still comes to ball games and drives up from Jeffersonville or that area down there.
Boys Knobs, what you talking about now? Don't confuse the two.
I know. I don't confuse anything. Well, I confuse lots of things, to be honest with you. But no, I know he's from that area. So at any rate, hey, incidentally, I'll have to do this on a cell phone next Monday, and I won't be able to be on your screen with you. But if you'll call me, I'll do the show on the cell phone, because I will be, I believe, in Eugene, Oregon at that point in time.
Oh, boy. Enjoy that. It's a beautiful area out there.
I know. I haven't been to Eugene. I actually applied for a job there one time, and it was one of the I was in the final 5 for consideration for the position as their play-by-play guy, but I didn't. I started my career in Butte, Montana, back in the day in that would have been 1967. I was a disc jockey in Butte, Montana for a year and a half. And then I came back to Illinois, where I came from, And unfortunately, I never got back west again. And I didn't really want to go to KUGN in Eugene, Oregon for my next sportscasting job. And therefore, getting the Indiana job was the one that was competing with that scenario. And when that opened up, I took the IU job. I didn't want to go west again.
I think you made the wise decision.
Well,
Wise decision.
so it was probably it was the good Lord that made me stay here, I guess. I can tell you that.
And Indiana fans are the fortunate ones. Ironically, my last job in television as a sports anchor was out in Washington on the West Coast at KNDU. So spent some time out there too. It was weird. I got to tell you, I loved it, but it was like being in a different country. The 3-hour time swing, Monday Night Football coming on at 6, Sunday football coming on at 9 a.m. I'm like, wow, I don't know I can get used to this.
I know what you say. I know what you're saying. When I was in Montana, that was a different world I was living in too, especially in Butte.
There's a lot there, Don. There's a lot there.
A lot. Much. All right, man. We'll talk to you next week.
Great one. Appreciate you. The voice of the Hoosiers. Make sure you go out to Hoosier Hanks East for the Coaches Show with Don and Coach Yasir Rosemont. Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Monday. Don Fischer should be joining us here in just a moment.